We're going to look at the archaeology of the Moorish kingdom of Spain and Portugal. And up until I presented this lecture on Tuesday evening, for once it's been a topic that I've struggled to get a connection with. But slowly but surely, the opening of the subject, looking at the Moors on the Iberian Peninsula, started to make a lot more sense. I've actually got a direct connection, in a way, with Moorish civilization, because I've excavated at a site as part of a European funded scheme northeast of Madrid. And at that site, we were coming across Moorish archaeology, the archaeology of the Moors. So, need to present this at the top. This is Christianity that's been completely usurped on the Iberian Peninsula for the best part of 600, if not 700 years. The prime religion of Spain and Portugal up until 1492 was actually Islam. Now, that is a really interesting point to make. When we think about Spain and Portugal, we always think of them as being these countries that have always been part of Christendom. That is not true. There were wars across the Iberian Peninsula between various Christian factions and between various Islamic factions from between 700 AD and 1492. And it's a rather interesting topic. The archaeology tells us a story that can be sometimes different from the history that's presented, which is typical of all my lectures. So we're looking at a great leader in front of us in the usual attire, a Moorish conqueror, and it ties in very differently from what I used to think of these Moors in Spain. And all of you will remember that film with Charlton Heston as El Cid, as he's killed by an arrow, and the those besieging the city believe that El Cid has been killed. They're just about to capture the city, and then they put a dead El Cid on the back of a horse, upright, with his helmet on, and he charges out into the Moor hordes, and the Moors just dissipate and disappear. And this is my image of this landscape. So when I was excavating as part of this European funded scheme at a village known as Santa Maria, I knew nothing about the culture that I was excavating, and nor did my friendly goat. However, there is another area that I do actually find a connection with the civilization that we're looking at. And sometimes I look at images and I know exactly what they're saying. And this is one of those images. And this is even before I've looked at my notes. This is actually tinware produced across the Islamic world, the likes of Egypt, the likes of the Arabian Peninsula, the likes of Africa, and then into Spain. This is actually tinware. This is the equivalent of English and Dutch Delftware into the 1600s. So they've got a type of pottery that's hundreds of years in advance of the tinware that's being produced by us. And that's a good place to start, because their pottery is very different than contemporary pottery in Northern Europe and Great Britain. And the designs are very, very different. Whereas we would have very plain, very earthy types of pottery, mainly without glaze, around the 900s, 1000s. And then the glazed is put on the inside with our pots, very poor glazes. we won't have a direct lecture about pottery today because that's going to be one of my Thursday evenings. But what I'm attempting to broadcast is that Islamic civilization replaced Christian and other civilizations throughout the Mediterranean and Africa that were far behind their technology. Islamic technology not only advances in pottery, science, medical advances, the way they would construct buildings, and the word is sacred geometry. They would build in a form known as sacred geometry, which is basically everything has a geometric formula. And with the pottery, when I was excavating at a site in Cyprus, we were being told by one of the locals, I've got all this wonderful pottery. And all of us thought, what is this wonderful pottery? Because naturally, whenever anyone finds anything, member of the public, anyone who's a non-archaeologist, sorry to sound so bombastic, they always overemphasize what they found. And this was not overemphasized. It was some really nice pottery. And this was Islamic pottery, pottery produced by those Moors that at one time occupied Cyprus. Now, the Moors themselves, the Islamic peoples around the Mediterranean could be seen in several distinctive groups. The Moors that occupied the Iberian Peninsula into Africa. And then you've got the other Islamic peoples that could be similarly classed as Moors, but obviously given later names like Turks and the Ottomans and so on the eastern side of the Mediterranean and that wonderful Arabian Peninsula. This pottery itself is opening up where we are. One of the things that we do see about their pottery is script. They do like their script. They do like the way they project their script on buildings. They do like the way they project their script on pottery. One thing that those that do know anything about the Quran and the Islamic faith is that the portrayal of images is taboo. And that's an interesting point to go with. We don't see gargoyles carved over their architecture. We don't see images of Muhammad on their pottery either. But what we do see is portrayals of nature, which is really important, and the written word. You do see al-wahba greatly prescribed on their material projections. And you can see this wonderful beast on here. I'm actually going with this being a donkey. It's definitely got the ears. It's definitely got the tail. There's a very excited donkey here. And as we slowly get into what we're doing, more of their pottery and this pottery that I did see in Cyprus all those many years ago, we're talking about 1993, many years ago. Sue, that was the time I used to know you.
Oh, yes.
And I used to talk about Cyprus a little bit in the talks that you and it was your son used to come along to. And one of the, I remember something you said to me. How are you doing in your A-levels? I can remember that sentence. I can remember you saying it. It's really weird. So this is how long ago it was. But in 1993, I finished my A-levels and I actually was on a project in Cyprus. And this pottery that we saw had illuminating gold and had illuminating colors such as the green ochres and the red ochres, and it was really virulent colors and glossy. This isn't that type of pottery. That's because the glaze, the external glaze, has been worn away and the colors have faded. But this is that tinware, and you come to respect this in your mind, and obviously seeing it as well. I know some of you have been to Granada. I know some of you have been to different parts of Spain. And one thing that you'll see dominating Spain is the architecture of the Moors. This is Alhambra Palace. And this is all carved out of stone. This isn't wood. This is carved out of stone. And you may correct me, but let's not correct me on this one. Lots of the image of the buildings that we will see are contemporary and haven't been mucked around with. Yes, I will add that there has been restoration of parts of the Alhambra Palace, but lots of what you do see today, one or two of the images, are actually contemporary with over 700 years ago. And then we jump into this image. But before we jump into this image and get really excited, let's just look at this one little bit of a rim of a piece of pottery from the land of the Moors. Now, this pottery was not the sole domain of the Moors. It was extensively traded. And do you know what? On my Monday lecture, it's the actual Cornish class. We've got a Cornish class. And I like to jump into my Cornish classes, something about Cornwall. And I said, well, where are they getting their tin ochre from to produce their millions of objects of tinware that are produced every year across this world of the Mediterranean and being traded? And the answer must be that it must be getting their tin from Cornwall, because a lot of tin is being used in the production of this pottery. Basically, it's an earthenware pot. Earthenware being a terracotta color, red, orange color, and then what they do, they dip it extensively into a tin wash, and then as that dries, as it goes off, then they would put another glaze onto it. But this is actually even more advanced than that. You can actually see the core structure is actually clay. A type of China clay to produce this pottery. So this wasn't competing with some of the best in China, but could compete with it on a domestic level. I love this image. And why do I love this image? It tells me of the futility of warfare in regards to religion. It tells me of the pointlessness of religion and the pointlessness of war between religions. The first statement, the pointlessness of religion, that's my own view, but the view could be carried, the pointlessness between wars between the Christian world, the Islamic world, the Jewish world, and all the rest of it. And this is borne out in this wonderful photograph from the Alhambra Palace itself. What you do see is the wording, Allah is great, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. It's absolutely everywhere. It's carved in there into the stone intricately. Now, the reason why I'm talking about the futility of warfare between religions is that after the Moors were expelled from what was their remaining territory in southeastern and central Spain, these palaces were taken over by the Christians, and all the carvings remained. They weren't destroyed. It was almost as if a Christian could wander around this palace and see the wordings of, the call to prayer, Allah Akbar. It's there. They didn't deface it. And you're thinking, how hypocritical. You've defeated one religion, and now you're using that religious palace or the religious mosque for your place of worship. You're not changing anything. And what I'm getting at is, if you've got a religious place of worship in another religious place of worship, it's a great contradiction. And again, when we look at the Hagia Sophia, one of the things what we didn't look at the Hagia Sophia with Constantinople in 1453, the 29th of March 1453. I'm remembering these dates pretty well these days. Mehmed the Great said we need to keep the Hagia Sophia, and everything in it was kept as it was, but it was converted to an Islamic place of worship. And you're talking about hours earlier, they're killing the Christians and the Christians are killing the Muslims. And I see that as a great contradiction, and I see the great futility of warfare regarding these two sets of religions. And the other point I'd like to make is as the Islamic world, the Ottomans, are rising in the East, and they're invading from the east. They're invading through the gates of Constantinople, and they're invading into the Balkans, and they're going all the way over to the gates of Vienna. In the western side, the Moors are being expelled from Spain and that part of Europe. It's almost as if there's a yin and there's a yang. And if the Moors had worked and had the military power, which they probably still had a little bit of, alongside the Ottomans, these were the great religious contenders for the same religion. If they'd worked together, they could have actually conquered the whole of Europe. In many ways, I don't to have a portent, to have any preference for any religion. And if any of you have been on some of my walks or listened to some of my other lectures, I have a habit of completely bombasting Catholicism, and particularly the monasteries and all those orders. And I haven't done the same with Islam. Because I don't really know enough about Islam to be that critical of it. But I will say one thing. What we do see in regards to the destruction of other people's religion, we don't see that with the Ottomans, and we don't see that with the Moors. We don't see that likewise with the Christians, where they take over their sites in some places in regards to those groupings of people. But then again, we have the extreme where the Crusaders go into Jerusalem and they destroy Islamic places of worship. And then when we look at Islamic State, we see the Islamic State destroying places of Christian worship. And then we look at Cyprus, for example. We look at, you're not going to find a mosque in southern Cyprus, and you're not going to find a decently standing Byzantine church in the north of Cyprus. So there are great extremes. But back in this day, back in the 1400s, there's a respect for other people's religious buildings, even though they're being occupied by a new faith. But again, this is all completely carved out of stone. All of it is carved out of stone. And then you start to think, why aren't we building similar places of worship in Great Britain? You know, our forms of building, when they're building these great palaces in the 11, 12, 1300s, we're still struggling to get the decorated form into the form that eventually becomes into the 1400s. And in lots of ways, we're learning from Islamic art and Islamic forms of art to broadcast the way we would build our churches in the West. This is that plan. And you might see that the Basques retain the north part of Spain. But as when you look at the Catalans, you look at the rest of the peoples across Spain and Portugal, they struggle for a sense of identity amongst this Islamic, Moorish Cata fate for all those hundreds of years. But in a way, what we do see is that it's almost as if there's a respect between the Moors and the Christian faith. And that must be true, because if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't see an explosion of Catholicism when the Moors left Spain. There needs to be a vehicle to have Catholicism surviving amongst the Moorish faith for all those hundreds of years. So what you do see is the Moors, as I said, in the West, and then the other Islamic peoples in the East. But they do interchange. They do fight against each other. And you've got those things that I used to learn about when I was a child, the Barbary pirates, and you've got that constant fighting between the faiths. This is rather interesting. I've already mentioned this, and you've obviously guessed it by now. Spain, for example, like so many other countries, has not always been called Spain, and it hasn't always had that one faith. And what we're going to do, we're going to try and block that phone call of Jane's out. So where is her phone call?
Oh, righty-ho. I recognise
That's Sue. There you go. I've done it. Sue has been excluded from the lecture. So anyway, that is a very useful statement, and it is very difficult to grasp, because when you think about the Knights Templars, for example, the destruction of the Knights Templar Order on Friday the 13th of October, that in 1307. I think the year might be wrong there, but you almost think as if the Knights Templars are being excluded from Spain and Portugal, when at the same time large tracts of Spain are actually under the control of the Moors. And the other point to be made is that when we get religious fanaticism in Spain, when we look at the likes of never expect the Spanish Inquisition, you always think that, well, if the inquisitors are so fervently Christian, why aren't they destroying all these Moorish sites of all these buildings? Why aren't they defacing the word of God in these Moorish buildings? And they're not. So in a moment, if you compare that with the fanaticism that's vented against those Norman religious orders across Britain in the 1530s and the 1540s by Henry VIII's men, where anything Catholics destroyed or whatever, you see this against the Protestants, against the Catholics. It's the same religion, but you don't see this Christian religion doing the same against those sites that were formerly occupied by the Moors. There's Alhambra and the palace that we've been so describing. Cordoba, that's another great place of Islamic buildings. And you've got Seville and you've got Cadiz, all across this landscape of Granada. And then when I made the statement that there are lots of remains of the Moors across Spain, one of my group on Tuesday said, actually, Karl, that's not exactly true. And I said, okay, explain. Well, he said that he'd gone to the far eastern part of Spain, beyond Madrid, where you would expect to still find Moorish buildings. He said that there were very few to no buildings left of the Moors. And the realization was that the reason why those buildings don't survive isn't because they were torn down by Christian zealots. It's because of the Civil War. A large chunk of the Spanish landscape was completely destroyed in the Civil War. And that really explains it. But down in the south, large chunks of these buildings constructed by the Moors still stand today. So if you can get that map in your head, Granada, Alhambra, Cordoba, you know where these are, and Kuwaita there. And here we go, this wonderful map. Now, there's another point I need to make, and I think the other point is to be seen within this image. Now look at this little map. There you go. In 632, Muhammad, the Quran. You've got 633, and you've got it expanding. The faith is expanding. 633, and you've got it expanding into 638. It's going into Turkey. The religion's spreading. 641. Remember, this is only a short period that the religion's been founded. 644. Within 10-15 years, it's spread all across Asia. It's spread all across this landscape of Asia, and it's obviously spread into Africa, and it's actually starting to spread into Europe as well. And again, look at that spread. It's almost as if the Islamic faith is taken on board much quicker than the Christian faith had risen in the suppressing Roman world. Again, those dates, 642, that's how far. I'm just going over this again. And then when we come into our Moorish world, look at that. They're starting to head into the 650s, into some of those islands in the Mediterranean, Cyprus, and heading into Spain as well. I love it when you get a little thing like that. So when you actually get to this again, within 100 years of of Medina and Mecca, and you've got the explosion of this new religion. Within 100 years, under 100 years, it spread all the way across northern Africa. It spread all the way in, across Qatar into Gibraltar. They captured Gibraltar in 711. Cordoba, the great Christian place of worship, in 711 as well. They captured Seville. Toledo as well. They captured Toledo. If you know, Toledo, the sword. That's what it's famous for, in 714. All the way over to the Pyrenees in 721. It's probably the Pyrenees that actually stops them heading all the way to Marseille. And if the Franks, the Frankish people, the founders of France, hadn't have held off these Moors, there would have been a wave of Moors going across the whole of Europe, and they would have been unstoppable. And probably the only place that would have resisted the Moors may have been northern Spain and Britain itself. I think this is quite amazing looking at this. And those that want to feel a little bit of knowledge and to understand a little bit more. Spain was originally Hispana. Anyone who knows anything about the 9th Hispana Legion that came over to Britain, that would have originated in Spain. What we then got is that the Romans more or less invited the Visigoths to settle in Spain. It says invaded, but the Visigoths are there. I excavated a little bit of Visigoth archaeology. I'll come on to that little bit of the lecture soon. And then obviously they were there for a few hundred years, and then it's over to the Moors, and they haven't left until 1492. And that date, 1492, you will know about. That's that date that we were taught about in school, 1492. That period of that age of discovery, Christopher Columbus. And it's almost as if the Italian Christopher Columbus managing to get some funding, some ships together for the court of Spain and Portugal, going all the way over to the New World. It's almost as if in 1492, that's the beginning of the Enlightened Age for Christianity, after the Moors have left. But lots of the Moorish quarters and people remained in Spain until the 1600s, until they were finally ejected from the land. But I know some of you have been to Spain, and you will know about the Islamic quarters of some towns in southern Spain. And there's Islamic populations there living amongst the buildings that their ancestors had created hundreds of years earlier. An image, 1492, the Moors are being ejected from the country. But when we look at the word ejected, it's not a bloody ejection in most areas. It's not what's happening when we look at the Ottoman conquest by Mehmed of the Balkans and the Byzantine world. It's a different understanding. Of course, you could correct me and say there was a lot of blood being shed. But the Moors did survive, but they were ejected and they went to Africa. But lots of Moorish communities did carry on until the 1600s. And a floweret, not a floret, but a floweret, a piece of Moors tinware, Islamic tinware. And again, this has lost a great deal of its color, but you can see the tin there. You can imagine that anyone having this on their table in London, for example, would have looked at this and thought, this is really nice. It would have been white, it would have been glossy, but this was typical pottery across the Mediterranean. Very typical. And this isn't a competition between what is the greatest religion or what is the greatest period of illumination. Let's do a little bit of balance. So what you've got the different Islamic peoples wanted to compete with each other. So they had their scientists, they had their scholars, they had their physicians, and each of the physicians would like to undo the other physician. So in other words, they had an explosion of academia. In the West, we were warring, and our explosion of academia really didn't occur until the late 1400s, early 1500s, with that wonderful word, the Renaissance. They had their Renaissance hundreds of years before us. So there's the balance. When we look at the Islamic world, they first got their cannons and gunpowder before us. They've got great architecture before us. They've got great castles and citadels. We do believe that lots of the castles that are being created when the Crusaders see them are being replicated. A good example of that is when we look at the walls at Carnarvon, those concentric walls. We learn from these things. But I don't think that should be a derogatory learning. I think we should be thankful for that, as much as we're thankful for the Chinese with what they give us in regards to pottery and building and academia as well. All cultures on the planet would learn from other cultures. And one other thing that I've got to say before I forget it is the monetary system. And what we do find is that the euro of the day in the 1100s was actually the Islamic dirham, the Islamic monetary system. An Islamic silver coin is worth the same weight in silver in Jerusalem as it's in Alhambra, as it's in Paris, as it's in, for example, in London. Even though it had Islamic lettering on it, the weight held its value. So this is why in archaeological excavations in Britain, we occasionally find Islamic coins. They are the euros of the day, the standard. And again, the true extent from 632 all the way through to probably about the 1000s. There's a few errors. Eventually, all these islands would be under the control of the Ottomans, the Moors, the Berbers, and other Islamic people. We're missing there that there would be a white dot there of the Basques that wasn't conquered, and other areas as well. So let's have a little look at the time. We're doing okay for time. So the Moorish architecture is a variation of Islamic architecture. It's found throughout the world. The motives and repeated patterns, again, sacred geometry in Moorish architecture. We've got a little bit of a gallery, not too many images, other images from across the Islamic world, which you do see similarly across the land of the Moors in Spain and Portugal. The arches, the calligraphy, the vegetative designs, the decorative tiles. Moorish architecture is named after the Moors, a North African people who conquered the Iberian Peninsula and other lands. And for, it's in lots of ways, this is the epitome of ignorance. We think we know about history. And if I had asked, okay, I'm going to ask it now, Keith, if we mentioned Spain, would you have always thought it had been Christian from the end of the Roman period? Is that a fair question? What's your answer?
Yeah, to a degree. Then I suppose I'd be coloured by watching, as you said earlier, El Cid, which showed, a mixture of Muslim and Christian and alliances between the Muslims and the Christians for fighting somebody or other and vice versa, and then fighting each other. So I always come across Spain as being a very mixed culture.
But for the dominance, the massive dominance of the Moors, would that this
yeah
is something...
from the invasion, in sort of 800 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Through until what,
1492.
1100, something like that, really. Yeah.
well, obviously, what we do see in the 1200s, the late 1100s, 1200s, the power of the Moors is actually is waning. So by 1492, that's the only bit of Spain that they've got. But again, it's this absolute dominance for a long period of time. So the mosques are the most common examples of Moorish architecture, where there's lots of palaces, homes, businesses that still survive. This is an interesting one. The Moorish architecture, the Mezquita, or the Grand Mosque of Cordoba, is today the region's Catholic cathedral. So what you've got the Grand Mosque of Cordoba, north central of Alhambra, and then you look at that, you see this great mosque has been converted to a Catholic cathedral, and you think what you're seeing with Constantinople after the 29th of March 1453, what you're seeing is the Hagia Sophia then being the great mosque of the Islamic world. It's almost as if there's a swap over of massive religious sites. So again, the symmetry, the geometry, the mathematics, the form, and they were quite proud of their art, and it's quite fine. We're not producing anything like this in respect to our cathedrals until about the late 1400s, whereas they're building within these forms of art from the 9, 10, the 11, 1200s. So this itself is a repetition, mirror images, and when we can actually see that with the way the art is actually formed, as we get a bit of annotation there, you've got the sense of repetition, and you've got the symmetry of the arches, and the only thing that I could see would be in parallel at this period in the Western world would be the Norman Romanesque arch. We've got nothing like this, and the way it's created. And again, I'm gonna repeat something that I've already said. This isn't a slight of Christendom. This is reality. This is the way things are developing, and when you get to the really complicated forms, and you look at, say, for example, if this is a basic form, this is a truly advanced form. So this is all stone built. This is all perfection, and this isn't sort of flush, nice curved surfaces, right? This is all intricately carved surfaces with a repeated sense of sacred geometry. And sometimes you guys can be thankful to the other classes that I offer this lecture to, because we went into sacred geometry because one of the chaps on the Tuesday evening knew a lot about sacred geometry, and I just thought, Carl, just shut up and listen. So this is a little bit more information. I'll just sort of paraphrase this. If you want to read this as you go along, you're very welcome. So what we've got the Maghreb people of Africa, and they're exploding across this area. It's saying they're not a distinct, self-defined people, as I'm saying today, but I'm trying to sort of bring it into one umbrella. The term Moors has no ethnographic value. I'm struggling with words today because my nose is completely blocked. But then you go into the term has also been used in Europe in a broader, somewhat derogatory sense to refer to Muslims in general. You know, when you look at the Alan Rickman Robin Hood Sherwood film, you see the Moors being used as a derogatory term in that film, because obviously Robin Hood's got that Moorish slave with him, hasn't he, who's eventually released from slavery, and he becomes a great friend. He's derogatory referred to as a Moor, but we're not using it as a derogatory term today. We're actually using that to define a people and their great achievements. Spain, the landscape, Portugal, al-andulas, al-andalus, which is the name that the Moors referred to the land that they lived in. So obviously you've got the caliphate of the lands of the Moors within the Iberian Peninsula. They're conquering Sicily, they're conquering Cyprus, they're conquering bits of Sardinia, they're all over the place, and Malta as well. And that word there, the fall of Granada, 1492, marked the end of Muslim rule in Spain, although a Muslim minority persisted until their expulsion in 1609. I think I want to chuck in something that was said on Monday, but I've got to be very careful what I say because this is being recorded. On Monday, somebody said, there are two types of people in Spain. And I said, what's that? They said the tall, eloquent people that are the descendants of the descendants of the Moors. And I thought, right, the eloquent, tall, black-haired people. So what is this person going to say about the native Spaniards? And they spat it out. They said the native Spaniards are squat, short, black-headed, arrogant-looking people. And I just thought, oh my, you can't say that. But I think the point that they were, I think they've got a thing against Spaniards, actually. But I think the point that they were trying to make is that the tall people originate from the blood pool of Africa, and the shorter people are those short native peoples that have been in Spain all throughout those generations. And then you've got a third category of more paler skinned people that might originate from the likes of northern Italy when you look at the Roman blood pool. But there's nothing derogatory meant in what I've just said. It's just a way of understanding the mix of people that we do see across Spain today.
Surely Spain was settled by the Celts prior to the Muslim invasion.
When you use the word Celts, you're talking about the Germanic tribes that
Yes.
in the form of the Visigoths, yeah.
Yes.
Who were clearly not Celts. But you've used that word Celts just to wind me up, haven't you?
Would I do that?
Yeah, why would you do that? Yeah, you've really spoiled the lecture now, right? I'll stop the recording now. But anyway, what we've you've also got the Germanic peoples as well. So you're going to have the blonde-haired pool as well. So you've got lots of waves of people in Spain. But there is one clear thing about Spain today. The Spanish people are very proud of their identity, whether it's Basque, whether it's Barcelona, whether it's the people of Madrid, whether it's the Catalans, whether it's whoever it is, they're really proud of who they are. And you could say, well, people are always proud of who they are wherever they go. And I would say if you compare that with the people of Cymru and the people of Scotland, people in Wales are not proud of who they are, and the people of Scotland are. So that's the point I'm actually making. And Kathy's nodding her head and saying, I'm proud of who I am. Yeah, annoying. Anyway, so this is the Alhambra Palace complex in Granada, Spain. So what you're seeing is all this wonderful carved stone. And again, this is surviving. I think it's great that this has survived. On the backdrop of the Spanish Inquisition, again, I feel this shouldn't have survived. The Spanish Inquisition should have actually pulled all these buildings down, but they didn't. And I think, again, it's quite hypocritical. If the Spanish Inquisition were those great zealots, why are they allowing any sign of the Moors existing in Spain? And that's the point that I was making earlier on. This is Cordoba, the great cathedral at Cordoba. Was originally constructed as a Moorish mosque. And it's very difficult to use the word Moorish because it's a term that we use in our language, isn't it? That, you know, that was very Moorish. But anyway, this itself, this is great. I love it because you can see the beautiful painting there. You can see the way this is organized. And this is actually built by the Moors as a mosque, but now it's being used as the Cathedral of Cordoba. Its prayer hall is notable for narrow, graceful pillars and stripped double arches in a horseshoe shape.
Right.
You've seen this, have you, Chris?
No, no.
I thought you just said something.
No, I said striped.
Striped. What did I say?
Stripped.
Do you know what? It was that ghost walk on Friday. There was so much sexual innuendo. It's the first time I've ever had on a ghost walk that a woman said, "Oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to strip off for you, Karl, and I want to marry you."
She was
you know,
mad.
I got back and Michelle was not too pleased. Anyway, she said, Michelle said, I never want to go on one of your ghost walks because you flirt too much with the women. You should see how much I flirt with Chris and Ellen and Kathy. I miss it. Anyway, there you go. Look at that. That's known as the grotto, part of the Cathedral of Cordoba. And cusped arches, cusps or foils cut into its interior, called its entrado. But look at that there. Look at the beautiful form of carving at the top there. Absolutely wonderful. And again, and maybe I should say, make the following statement. The way the flowers are formed and the way all the intricate carving, maybe that was accepted by the Christians. But what wouldn't be accepted is the word of God, Allah be praised. And we don't see that covered up. And again, it's very strange. It's in Britain, what we do see is at the time of the Reformation, we see those paintings, those beautiful garish paintings at Llantwit painted up and covered up. And you've got plain walls and any icons are destroyed and smashed. But in a parallel, you don't see that here. Carved tiles. These carved tiles in a vegetative pattern. This is actually from an example from the United Arab Emirates. But this is a good example of what we do see still today in Spain, where you've got these beautiful tiles on the outside of walls in the southeast of Spain. And you see them ornately creating the outside of their buildings. And in a way, this is something that I was seeing when I was in Madrid. This is again a type of form that the Moors would have actually used, which we do see examples of. This is a great example actually in Pakistan, but we do see examples like this in Spain. This sense of the domes, the interior domes of lots of the buildings. Again, another example of the art of the Moors. And what I would like to do is tell you a little bit about this, and then we're going to leave these then till after the break. So what we're going to do is I had the beautiful opportunity of going to Spain for 6 weeks with my beautiful daughter Bethan and my ex-wife back then, and we went on this project, and I was excavating, and we weren't told anything because nobody spoke English. How dare they not speak English in Villaggio del Salvanes and the site that we worked on at Santa Maria, you know? Nobody even bothered to learn English, you know? So nobody actually told us anything. But what we did learn was a few things. That the site that we were excavating had been a Roman site. There had been a Visigoth stage, and it had actually been an Islamic stage. And I really didn't understand the gravity of the Islamic stuff. So what we would do, we would be excavating the Roman buildings. And there were lots of pottery kilns, and there were lots of corn drying kilns. So you would be looking at these structures, and then weirdly enough, a big chunk had been dug out. And there was some kind of Visigoth stage, but these big chunks that had been dug out were actually grain silos. And I remember feeling very angry. How dare these Moors dig out, take gouges out of these Roman structures? And I didn't really understand it back then, but now I do, that this site had been reused as a great grain storage silo place. So there would be these great, and what we would do, they would excavate these great big silos to store grain. And on the inside, it was charring, and there would be bits of grain on the inside. And what would happen is every time they were going to reuse the great grain silo, they would have to fire the inside. They would have to set up brushwood, and they'd have to fire the inside to kill any bacteria. So after the grain had been placed into the corn drying kilns, they would then scoop these out. They would put these in the great silos, and they would cap them off. And that was my connection with the Moors of Spain. I thought that this was a really interesting site to be working on. And it's quite likely, I wasn't told at the time, that lots of the kilns had been used, had actually been used by the Moors and the Visigoths, not forgetting them. And there were massive pits of pottery, wasters. Basically, anyone who knows anything about pottery, you get a certain amount of waste, and these are then taken out and tossed into this great pit. And it's likely that some of that wonderful Islamic pottery that we'll look at after the break. So what I'd like to do, I would like to ask if there's any questions and go back to some of those earlier announcements. Are there any questions from anyone? We'll cut that. Have you got any questions, Chris, Jane, Keith?
No questions.
Okay. What about you, Sue and Ellen? Sue Ellen, that's there you go. Taking me back a bit. Yeah, I used to remember that. Night, Jim Bob. Night, Sue Ellen. What about you, Goff? Anything you'd like to say?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Everybody sounds a bit faint. They do.
Ellen's muted.
Well, she is a bit of a witch. I don't want her casting a spell on me, do I? What about you, Kathy and Karen? Go for it.
They're muted too.
Good. Leave them like that.
Yeah, shut up, you. What about you, Jim and Chris? Anything you'd like to say?
Nothing from me. No, not yet.
All right, then. And nothing from Karen and Kathy. Nothing that Kathy wants to say today, which is quite surprising. Do you know what,
Well,
right?
I could do a few pronunciation ones.
Go on, pick him out.
No.
No, unfortunately, yeah, you should have done the lecture last night when I was trying to pronounce some of these lakes with a blocked nose. So I couldn't sound anything like this in pronouncing clear mice or anything like that. So anyway, what I'd like to say, Chris, we made a few announcements in the break, before the break. And basically I said, we've got archaeological techniques starting next Thursday at 7:30. If you're interested in that. We also mentioned the Walk Llantwit Major next Saturday, the 12th of September, Saturday week, 1:30, meeting outside the train station. You mentioned, I think you mentioned about the Dinas Powys one. Dinas Powys, 6th of October, 11 a.m. Dinas Powys. If you're interested in any of them, then you need to let me know.
Okay. 6th of October.
That's 11 a.m. Tuesday, Dinas Powers. And
Okay.
Ellen is organising the lifts. She's already got 6 people in her car.
Okay.
So what we're going to do, if there's no other questions, we're going to take a break. There's a question. Oh, unmute. Go on, Anne. Go on, you witch.
Well,
When you said they use pottery
will-
like a tin wash, how did that work?
But basically, if you've in the pottery next to me, what they used to do, they used to dip the whole thing into a very nice heavy wash, and then they used to set it out to stand, and
So
then
it was fired pottery dipped in molten tin.
no oxide.
Oh, right.
It's
Okay,
tin.
that's right. You kept saying tin. Right.
Yeah, it's a tin oxide. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you missed out oxide. And have you been to Toledo railway station?
No, I didn't get that far. No.
Have a look at it. Google it now. Image it.
I will do that in the break. I will do that in the break.
Right.
So if there's no other questions, oh, and by the way, Ellen, love for my little red-headed evil witch, Michelle.
Left back to her too.
All right then. Okay, I will see you all back in about 15, and then we're going to do the articles of the week. And I'm going to try and do something with my nose. I will speak to you soon.
Okay.
Carl,
Oh, Chris, Jane, Chris.
Those are drawings behind you. Chris?
What?
Christine, are those your drawings behind you?
No, I didn't do those. No,
All right.
no.
And by the way, that's her toilet. Jane, what were you going to say quickly?
I will be back after the break. I've got a hospital appointment.
Okay, Jane. See you, Jane. But have a chat with everybody
Okay.
and whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna go and get something
Okay.
to do.
Coffee break.
See you in a minute.
Bye, Jane.
Bye.
Bye, bye, sexy Jane. If you're going.
Bye.
Bye.
Come on. Oh, dear. Come on, Monty. Monty, come on. There you go. Good boy. There you go.
As usual. So I'm going to do. What's the other thing?
Oh, what was that?
Oh, bloody hell.
All right. Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Have you done it?
Yeah. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about the beginning because next time he's going to go through different steps. You should have to cut our head. Thank you.
Him and Eleanor come for the second service. I've done a recount at the second service because we've got somebody who's happy to go from the second service to the first one. And so that would make it possible. Lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah. I know it seems so easy at the beginning. And then you know, there is that sort of like instant expectation of, oh, okay. Lovely. Thanks very much. Bye here. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Scaffolders have just gone.
Pardon?
Scaffolders have just gone.
Oh, what have you had done?
Well, you know, it's just gone up.
Oh, have you got something wrong with your roof or?
No, the chimney's got to come down and then be rebuilt.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Sounds expensive.
Yeah, I'm having coffee, no biscuits.
Tea. A crimble.
Oh,
Big bun.
Oh.
Very tasty.
better than
Show
that.
off. I'm missing Chris's cakes.
Oh, yeah.
Who's eating biscuits? Dr. Michael Mosley would be telling us all off, wouldn't he? Apparently.
No, I'm not eating biscuits, don't worry.
Apparently, during lockdown, the volume of biscuits that were sold absolutely doubled. I mean, it was just like billions and billions in the economy.
Oh,
So,
no, I didn't buy any extra. It wasn't me.
It was key.
Mm.
We didn't have any at all because my son was doing the shopping for me, and so he eliminated anything sort of like, no, they're not having that. Sort of like, you know, double the quantities of broccoli. They can have an extra carrot, but definitely not having gin or wine.
That's very, very unfair.
Well, he said that I was like that when he was little and dependent on me. You know, no. So
You do online order now.
sorry.
You do online shopping now then, or is he still getting things for you?
No, my daughter's taken over now. She's much more indulgent.
All right. Bottle of gin a week, is it?
But also, I've started to go to the shops myself. It's very so just.
I believe I can. I believe I can make the sky. I believe I can invade Poland.
What's he saying? I can't hear him.
It sounded like I believe I can invade Poland.
No, it's I believe I can fly.
All right.
Oh, God.
Oh, I wish I was. You know, oh, I dream.
Yeah, cabaret as well.
Look away.
Thrown in for free.
Yeah.
Look away.
Because he knows we're a captive audience, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. And then one article about David Essex. So
They dug him up.
that's really cruel.
Resurrected.
I thought David Essex was still alive.
He is.
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
Bloody hell, Neil Diamond as well. Right, let's get started before Goff says get on with it. Right, so, okay, well, we've done all the announcements. That's good. So, and it's good that we've got a group of people going to Dinas Powys, all in Ellen's car. So far, we've got
Trailer
we've got Lynn, we've got Chris.
I'll ride on top.
Exactly.
with a gun.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so I'm going to mention what we're doing next week before we go on, because I will forget to tell you, I know. So well, there's no point looking at the end of the year, is there? Right, yeah. We're going to be visiting again North America. Now we understand them a little bit more. We're going to be looking at Mesa Verde. Doesn't ring a bell. Don't worry about it. It's the reverse from Chaco Canyon. It's the people that lived in the mountainside with all their buildings and stuff. That's what we're doing next week.
Okay.
Right.
Sounds good.
So we don't have any images with this. So let's carry on. Right. So here's the articles of the week. It starts off with this one. Can you see that illustration?
Yeah.
Basically, swallow that. Fossil of 12-foot lizard lies inside 15-foot beast. So some kind of, it's called the Guayhashogai Ichthyosaurus. In other words, it's actually Ichthyosaurus. Swallowed a Yakapatota, swallowed a Thalattosaurus. So in other words, basically, if they can get the imagery right, we can see all its bones and everything inside there without doing an autopsy. So that's the first one. That's the first article of the week. You've got 19 to go. This is quite corny. Boy detectorist is foiled by gold. A boy of 10 who found a Bronze Age golden ribbon with his metal detector almost threw it away thinking it was foil, only to turn out that it was a prehistoric adornment worth thousands of pounds. Skull found under bridge was not a recent murder victim. It turned out to be from the year 1150, found at the village of Barford on the River Avon. Ancient woolly mammoth emerges from a Siberian lake. Basically, it's about the size of a prehistoric puppy.
Oh.
It's a little tiny little thing, and it was a little mammoth with a little trunk, with his little legs, and his little nose.
Oh.
Shut up. Scientists hail revolution in radiocarbon dating. Apparently, not only can we go further back, but it's likely as well that radiocarbon dating has become more accurate. Climate, not humans, led to the demise of woolly rhino. Well, what they worked out is that humans reached Siberia around 15,000 years ago on the 14th of October 816 because it was really cold. And when they arrived there, the woolly mammoths had already been extinct for 15,000 years. There he is. There's Tucker, the woolly rhinoceros.
Oh, bless him.
Oh.
Basically, Grange Hill, he had Tucker's luck. Metal detectors unearths £100,000 in a haul of Civil War silver coins found in a field outside a pub. A man unable to drink in a pub decided to go metal detecting, and there he found this hoard dating from the Civil War. And it's a bit of a mixed bent, I think. But anyway, it was found with a Mine Lab Equinox 800. Know it well. Climate. Here we go. We couldn't do a press article time without the Neanderthals, right? The Neanderthals were not killed off via climate change. So in other words, there's no evidence to say that the Neanderthals were killed off at all now. Hoard found in field sheds new light on the Bronze Age. Those little things there, can you see them? Good.
Yeah.
Good. Basically, what they are, they're harness parts for a Bronze Age horse named Dobbin, dating back 3,000 years. Also found by a metal detectorist. It said, "This is what dreams are made of." His girlfriend said, "Well, if you'd sleep with me more, you might know what that was about." Sorry. There we go. There's Raphael. Apparently they found the head. You thought that was funny, didn't you, Karen? Good. There's the head of Raphael, dating to 1520. They found his head interred in the Pantheon in Rome. Not the Parthenon, the Pantheon. See, it's my nose blocked. Look at that guy there. The story of the Geridian third coin.
Is that Goff?
What's that?
Was that Goff in the corner?
Yeah, that's Goff in the corner there. He's cooking.
yeah.
Oh, yes.
It does, yeah.
With a beard.
Uncanny.
It looks nothing like Goff. Right, anyway, so here we go. The headlines are Gordian Bennett. It's a Roman coin. Of the Roman Emperor Gordian III, was found by a man out litter picking, wait for it, on a romantic time with his girlfriend. Litter picking. What is wrong? What is wrong with people these days? Anyway, he found it, right? He thought it was a Spanish peseta. But in putting an image online, it soon turned out to be a coin from Geridian III. And he was really impressed with finding this. He thought it was worth a lot of money, but unfortunately it's only worth £45. So there you go. Heat wave. Evidence. Look at those images there. You can just about see outlines of Roman forts. Due to the hot conditions, right? There you go. The top one as well. You can see a Roman road going across, if you see it. Anyway, you can't see it. Anyway, So basically, this itself, more sort of evidence being found via aerial photography. You know, getting ready now for the ceramic dildo. I am not showing you an image of it though. Roman amphitheatre to be built on ancient site. They're rebuilding an amphitheatre in Oxfordshire. Why? Who's going to use it? Oh yeah, mud wrestling. Kathy and Karen mud wrestling. I got front.
Can't wait.
Well, me and Goff have already bought tickets.
Yeah.
Do you have to bring your own mud?
Bring your own dildo.
Yeah, and that one. Right, here we go. Berlin build for Roman ships burnt by Nazis. Obviously, Benito Mussolini funding the finding of the 2 ships at the Lake of Diana in Italy. The Nazis have been ordered to pay compensation to reconstruct these 2 vessels. So compensation is going to amount to about £20 million to reconstruct them, using not wood but fiberglass. The Vikings raped, well, pillaged, and they also gave us smallpox. So, you know, it's the type of thing that happens, isn't it? Historians believe smallpox existed as far back as 10,000 years ago on the 14th of October at 815. But it was brought to Britain by the Vikings 1,400 years ago. Here we go. Backyard diggers find a treasure trove in the garden. I'm gonna hit to the chase. A child digging in his back garden, bored, in the pandemic, was excavating, obviously, putting a bit into this, right? He was fascinated by time team, right? This one boy in Staffordshire, alongside lots of other discovery, let's get through this, in Bradford, Lincolnshire, making all these finds, was amazed to find a white object that he thought was a rolling pin. And he took it. He took it into his house, and his mum didn't actually tell him. Leading through the house, his mum didn't actually tell him that it was a dildo, but it was actually a ceramic dildo, believed to have been used by a Victorian lady when the house was up. Anyway, I'm presuming it was used by a Victorian lady. Also, what we've got is belt hooks from the medieval period, cast out of copper. We've also got a medieval silver groat. We've got a stone saddle quern. We've got various arrowheads and the pièce de résistance, a Roman brothel token. So when I mentioned the Roman brothel token on Monday, it was presumed that, yes, but anyway, we won't say any more about that. They've also found lots of Roman greyware pottery, lots of pieces of sandstone with script on, thought to date from the 300s, silver groats, various other things of archaeological significance, and all of these are being reported to the Portugal Antiquity Scheme. And obviously individuals going out metal detecting as well, youngsters metal detecting in their gardens. So there you go. Some of the finds on the left there as well. So also the other thing as well is, we did think that the Globe and the Rose Theatre were some of the oldest theatres found in London, but we have now found the Red Lion, which dates to 1567. And what they've got is basically a little bit of an outline of the stage. This is one that you had, outline of the stage. Also, wonder chickens. Chickens didn't originate from China. We've got evidence now to say that chickens originated in Belgium some 67 million years ago. And also, there is the first autograph. Yeah? So you can imagine somebody going up to you in the street saying, "Oh, hey, look, mate, you're famous, aren't you? I've got an earthenware slab. Do you want to autograph it?" So he goes, "Yes." Right, who do you want? Right, okay, Daphne, yeah, hang on a minute. Yeah, right, okay. Here's my signature, dib, 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 dib. And there is the signature. It's amazing how they used to do these things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here we go, shell shock. 10 million year old turtle. I think it's, how long is it? It's just over 8 feet long. And then finally, earliest evidence found for humans in North America. Now, this is really interesting. The one thing about, we always used to think that our human ancestors evolved in America. Well, they got there, then they evolved to create their villages and stuff. We think that they didn't get there until about 15,000 years ago. However, evidence now tells us that they were in the Americas 31,000 years ago. So, you know, it's quite possible that we're going to get dates as far back as 100,000 years ago in America. And they're just pushing the boundaries back. And here we go. Neanderthals were creative, clever, and kind. They've just got an image problem. Their name is a word for opish brutality. I'm not going to read out this whole article, but slowly but surely it's going to turn out that somebody is going to finally admit that the Neanderthals never became extinct at all. In fact, as a species, they probably continued. No, forget about the interbreeding bit, probably continued. Mark my words. So what we're going to do, we're going to continue on with what's left of this lecture, and we're going to, that was a lot of articles of the week. It took me 15 minutes to get through all that. Christ almighty. So we're going to get straight down to the undies. And what are you seeing on the
Map of Spain.
Okay. So we all know I worked at this village of Villaggio di Salvanes, Santa Maria. And one thing I did say is that I need to take a note of something a minute. More collapse. One thing I did actually say is that they didn't actually portray images of individuals on their pottery. But you can clearly see with this, you've got images of 4 ladies. Now, images of individuals in Islam are you just can't show them. However, this is a plate that would have been used to trade with. This is a trade good. So we're actually finding this tinware, this tin oxide pottery all across Europe. And basically they're trading it for the overseas market, not the at-home market. This is why you're actually getting figurines. If any of you know those films from the 1960s, you will know that a Roman sail is square, a pirate sail is going to be triangular. Isn't that right? I'm glad nobody agrees with me. Hang on a minute, folks. My computer screen's just gone off. So, right, okay. I haven't gone away. Are you still seeing me?
Yeah, we're still. Yeah. No problem.
So
they're not women because they're rowing.
Well, they look. Oh, come on! They look like women.
Men have hair too.
Yeah, but they look like women.
Oh, no, they don't.
Even
Keith,
the one with the beard.
Do they look like women?
Well, there's 5 oars and there's 4 people. It could be
Second
rowing.
one's got a beard.
I know that it looks like a beard on the second one, but it could be
the
they're wearing
bearded
hats.
lady. Oh God Almighty! Flipping heck! Anyway, turn your mics off again. Right. Anyway, so this is obviously for the export market. Whoever they are, they look like women to me. Right?
Well, everything looks like a woman to you.
So,
Can you turn your mic off? Good.
what?
They still got. They still got their mic on. Oh, there you go. I've muted it now. There you go. Oh God! I tell you what, people can be so pedantic, right? I was talking about the wonderful sales, right? The fact of the matter is, whoever these people are, they're for the foreign market. not for the at-home market. So obviously indicating that they were very much in their trade. Again, what we do see is small finger bowls, and we can actually see on this one that you can see the earthenware actually poking through. And there it is. Nice bit of earthenware poking through. And to give you an idea as well, anyone interested in this type, in pottery and so on, will know that this is actually copper oxide to actually give the decoration on it. So obviously what we're talking about is cobalt blue, the blue oxide, and we're talking about copper oxide, copper, iron oxide, manganese oxide to give all these different shades.
The time is 12:23 p.m.
Who the hell is that? Oh God, it's not going well, is it? We've already seen this one. And there is one interesting thing about this, is that this is clearly for the foreign market. And why? IHS. This was actually created at Valencia, probably more into the late 300s, early 400s. This is clearly for the foreign market. And you can actually see a bit of gold inlay there. IHS. So you can imagine Moorish craftsmen creating this for an important dignitary somewhere in Christian territory. And in other words, there was no qualms. There was no, you know, the sense of hypocrisy is there. But they want to make money. And if you're going to make money, you need to put these designs on your pottery to be able to sell them. So what I'd like to do is actually, there's a little bit of an article coming up. And Archaeology U-turns, how ancient Spaniards enjoyed better lives than their contemporaries. Ancient Spain, or al-Andalus, as it was known, enjoyed a period of relative stability in the 900s, with myriad ways in which Spaniards then might have enjoyed better lives than their contemporaries, and archaeologists has explained. So this is an article written in June this year, which is great. There's little bits in it that sort of conflict with some of the things I've said, but al-Andalus, what I've said throughout is that local people, even though they would have been under the heel of their Moorish lords, naturally, large populations would have been unscathed and untouched by their Islamic paymasters. And this is an astrolabe itself. And we know as well that the Muslims were great seafarers. The astrolabe was actually invented by an Islamic mathematician. So again, seafaring, some of these are great seafarers. They're going all the way from the Gulf all the way through to India and China. They would need decent navigation equipment. Here we go. Without an understanding or grounding in basic history, it is difficult to imagine a time before your own. This is especially true when we think about countries, borders, and the customs that might once have prevailed in comparison to the present day. And I did actually put it up on my list. If any of you actually look at the Toledo train station, you will actually see that they've actually built the Toledo train station in the 1800s, completely influenced by all those early Moorish styles that we see in Granada. So thank you for that, Ellen.
Pleasure.
Neither was the popular tourist destination state religion always Catholicism. Al-Andalus was the name given by the Muslims to the present day Spain, as we know. It denotes the time roughly from the 700s all the way to the 1400s, which saw Spain come under the rule of many different Arab or Berber states. What the hell was that? Was that you, Goff? I know. So what we're seeing is obviously these illustrations, sort of obviously under the heel of this new world. But again, when we think about Roman Britain, hundreds of years before this, we think of small numbers of Romans in Britain. And to be honest with you, there wouldn't have been massive numbers of Moors across the whole of Spain either. They've been concentrated in certain areas. There would be certain lords in this area, taking on local people to fight for them and work for them and so on. So that's what we're talking about. The Caliphate of Umayyad. This is Spain. Although not overly visible today, remnants of Spain's Islamic past persist throughout the country, in some places more than others. As we've mentioned, there's been lots of changes. Obviously, we've mentioned the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba now, and we look at that being converted to the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Assumption, and everything there embodies what it had been used for before. So looking at al-Andalus, Spain itself, from about the 900s, was probably the best place to live in Europe. People living there would have been far better than their contemporaries in other places, as I've demonstrated. I'm thinking living in Cordoba in the 900s or Granada in the 1400s. There were political entities which had a lot of problems, but at the same time, they had a lot of economic stability for the period. And people seem to have been happier and able to enjoy a certain level of freedom. That's one thing that Muhammad preached about religious tolerance and religious freedom. It may not seem it, but if you read the Quran, you'll know what I'm talking about. And culture in comparison with other states and other places in the medieval period. There is one line that's important to me there: stability for this period. Having stability gives you the ability to generate wealth. Having stability gives you the ability to have the people to build these wonderful palaces, to build the wonderful places of worship in the first place. If you're fighting all the time, you wouldn't be able to build these structures. I think that it is important to bear in mind, in fact, when Spanish Enlightenment scholars in the 1700s tried to create an enlightened state in the model of France or the Italian state or England, when they looked into their past, what they found was al-andalus, an Islamic world in Spain. And it was widely recognized that this had been the most prosperous period in the history of the Iberian Peninsula. Even before the period of Spanish and Portuguese conquest of the world. And I'm going to say it. This is quite a daring statement to make. Maybe there was more wealth in the land of the Moors in Spain than was generated from the period that the Spanish and Portuguese raped and pillaged South and Central America. And the reason why I'm daring to say that is because when you look at the buildings that survived from the Moorish period, they are far greater in quality than anything that was built out of the raped wealth from the Central and South American world. Am I right? Am I wrong? I would say that there's some truth in what I've just said. Again, looking at this, this is the Alcazar Palace. Look how perfect this is. Look at the type of art the Moors were responsible in offering us today. Now, again, the sense of symmetry. This is just a row of houses, not a row of houses in Barry, or that small row of terraced houses in Llantwit Major. But look at this here, all these wonderful doorways, the art, the symmetry, the replication, and so on and so on. And this is created for the vulgaris like you and me, obviously people who had a little bit more money. Speak for myself, Keith, I know you're rich. Of course, modern Spaniards, much like the rest of the world's population, enjoy certain things that their predecessors would never have imagined ever having. The people of al-Andalus are worlds away from the people of present-day Spain. I'm very wary of saying something in Islamic Spain was better than it is now. And it depends very much on the context, on what you're looking for. But from my own personal experience, when I went to Spain, it had great contrasts. And lots of the buildings that I saw were modern buildings due to rebuilding after the terrible civil war in 1936. We can only guess what Spain was like in the 1800s or 1700s. But from the grand remains that exist from the Moors, I would say it was far superior in architecture. When we look at what happened in Cordoba in the 900s, and in a general context of the Iberian Peninsula in the 1000s, when there was a big political crisis with a lot of new states emerging and collapsing very quickly, cultural life was incredibly brilliant and incredibly stable. Things carried on amongst it all. So you can look in a distance, that building there is that great mosque, the Grand Mosque at Cordoba, obviously changed and altered to be the Lady of the Assumption, to be a cathedral today. The different ruling states were competing to show their luxuriousness and the brightness of their coats to each other. So what we're saying there, this is what I said. I said this. The intellectual competition, the poetic competition, the architectural competition that left a very strong mark in Islamic history, and that has been transmitted in Spanish history as well, even to this modern day, and Toledo train station. I've got to show you that at the end, actually. It is quite a brilliant period in terms of art and culture, but it's also a period of economic stability. It was a period of peace and the creation of material structures too. Now that word peace, you know, we always think about the warring Islamic world in the East, constantly fighting in the Balkans and all those crusades and stuff. But again, the only reason they're able to create this high culture in Spain and Portugal is because they had stability. The state of Cordoba collapsed at the beginning of the 1000s, but all the cities and structures lasted the structure of the state itself. That's an important sentence. The cities had been created in the 8 and 900s, but survived into the following periods. Many of them survive today. Why? Because they were finely made. So out there are lots of these little palaces and lots of castles and little towns and so on associated with the earlier Spanish states. And again, if we look at that, these little ruins, like the palace at Alhambra, like the cathedral at Cordoba, like the remains at Seville and elsewhere, you might be able to see that this is a beautiful stone-walled palace. But as we slowly get to the end, and what I am going to do at the end, keeping an eye on time, I want to show you a little bit about what we're doing at Trelec. But before we actually go there, if we look at this again repeats Allah Akbar, Allah is great all over it. Now this, somebody said to me, what is this? And I said, it's an amphora. What, for storing wine? And I said, yes. And I think the words were, oh, don't be silly, Carl. In the Islamic faith, people don't drink wine. And I said, have you worked out what's going on here? What's going on here is this is being exported around all the countries of the Mediterranean to the Christian countries that drunk wine. Oh, right. And actually, the Moors introduced new strains of vines into the southern part of Spain. And this wine would be produced for the external market and would be traded all the way across the Mediterranean. And basically, Allah is great. It's obviously, you know, it's obviously broadcasting the Islamic faith. But you can't get rid of this until you've consumed all the wine. And this would be quite luxurious wine. So it's in other words, early advertising for Islam. Oh, hang on. We've got this image now. But what they are doing, this is actually from March 2020, Islamic era palace gate uncovered in Spain. There we go. This has been reconstructed. Lots of this has been reconstructed. But it's one of the earlier forms of building. Andalusia, Spain. That's another locality we haven't mentioned. Traces of a multi-level gateway to the massive fortified palace built in the 900s by Abdul al-Rahman, which was the image of that fella that we first saw at the beginning of the lecture, that guy in that uniform. The first caliphate of Cordoba has been uncovered in southern Spain. The University of Madrid said that the gate is thought to mark the eastern entrance to the palace parade ground at the ruins of the royal city of Mediza al-Zahara, Andalusia. As many as 20,000 people were once part of the lavish palace household. 20,000 people worked in this palace, amazing, which included a zoo, an aviary, 4 fish ponds, 300 baths. It's a bit like that Carry On film, Carry On at your own convenience. That he wanted 10,000 B-days for his wives. Weapons factories and barracks for the soldiers of the Royal Guard. The palace was destroyed in AD 1010 during a civil war. Everything collapsed. And so we found buried the remains of tiles, wood, nails, beams, hinges, and ornaments. And obviously, they've got evidence of a Roman arch at Andalusia as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can give this other image. And the other image is showing you a broadcast of, where is this thing? Do you know what? Let's just go that again. Right. Oh, there we go. Thanks. And you can tell how important Moorish art is to the modern day people of Spain. So if we have a new share and look at that, everything that we've been talking about from the Moorish past of the country has been replicated in the 1800s, all of it. Every single style is there. And maybe the question should be, is religion in Spain very different than the Catholic religion elsewhere on this planet? Because I've always been looking at the sense of conflict in this lecture. I've been saying, surely the Christians wouldn't have liked these buildings standing. But I'm thinking of other tracks of Christianity. Maybe Spanish Christianity was different, and they accepted the Moors, and they accepted what they offered the country. And that is something that I need to explore in myself at a later date. So what I'd like to ask, are there any questions whilst we finish at this railway station? And if there's, what we'll do, we'll have the questions, and then we'll look at some artifacts from the excavations at Trellick. Let's see if there are any questions. Let's not spend long on these questions. Keith, Ellen, Goff?
Yeah, one of the things I read, I can't remember where, said that the Muslims were much more tolerant of other religions within their caliphates because of the tax system, in that if you were a non-Muslim, you were taxed a lot higher than if you were a Muslim.
Oh, I got to convert. I'm a Muslim, so I got to pay less tax. What about you, Sue and Goff?
Yeah, I haven't got any questions. I find it fascinating because I love the Moorish decoration. I mean, that's why I love Cardiff Castle and Castle Cock. You know, that they've adopted that Moorish decorations. So
William Burgess knew his stuff there, didn't he? So yeah. Goff or Chris, anything?
No, no questions, but I agree with Sue. I mean, Islamic art is wonderful, I think.
You know what? I actually thought people wouldn't like this lecture today, but it's paid off. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna ask if there's any questions about this bit. We're gonna look at the excavation for 5-10 minutes, and then I will let you go. So anything in Karen's house? Anything you'd like to say quick? You got an opportunity now before I mute you. 5.
Yes, I've got one. It's I've actually been to the Alhambra in Spain, and it was amazing.
Good, thank you. Anything else, folks?
No.
No.
Okay, so what I'd like to do quickly is I'd like to show you a little video, and I will do a commentary on it. So let me get it up on the screen. I tell you what, the innuendo that I'm getting off some of you guys is just like, hang on a minute, hang on, I got to cut the sound. Sugar, where's the bloody sound? I don't want the sound. Sounds like a porn movie.
In Spanish, and she pronounces the C's as.
Hang on, I've got to cut your mic.
Yeah.
Cut your mic.
Carry.
Otherwise, you cut. Right, you got to cut your mic. Excellent. So, are you seeing a video on you now?
No.
Right. Okay. So let's do that. Let's find out where you are, and if I stick that up on the screen. Oh, hang on, go away. Share screen and bingo. I will do a running commentary. Are you seeing a video now?
Yes-ish.
Right, go for it. So let's go to Trellick. It's only 1.5 minutes, this video.
Okay.
Oh no, this is right. So we got 2 sets of videos actually. So I'll show you them both. They're only 1.5 minutes each. So I think this is a couple of weeks ago. So we're on site, pottery washing, and the site is very much overgrown. So we've actually got a little gang of people who are actually working on site, and then you can meet one of our latest acquisitions in the world of working for us. So basically, we're excavating at the back of this manor house building. And there's John, Goff's best mate. There's Dwayne. And what they're doing, they're working on a wall here. And there's the evil witch, Michelle. That's Rachel, and that's Menna, who's actually working for us now. So they're actually working on the core of a wall. And what we'd hoped was that the wall continued. And that's exactly what we found on Sunday. We're finding lots of pottery on either side of the wall. So the left-hand side of the wall is actually the manor house gardens, and the right-hand side of the wall, the southern part of the wall itself, is actually the normal domestic gardens. So Damasni on the northern side for the Lord of the Manor, the allotments on the southern side. So the site is a little bit overgrown at this minute. And what we're going to do now, we're going to stop that video, and we're going to bring you up to date. So let's finally get the last video up here. And Trellig bingo. I think this is the right one. I hope this is it. Are you seeing some branches on the screen?
No, just you at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's try and. Problem is working with this technology. Share screen and bingo. This will bring things up to date. This is the 4th time we've been there this year. So Trellick is spelled 20 different ways. So the reason why we use a different spelling each time is to just wind people up like Kathy. So basically, go on the site now. And there we go. Women now wear pink helmets. And basically, over in the excavation here, what we've got, we're starting to actually clear up the walls. And so that when people visit the site, they can actually see it a little bit better presented. Stuart Wilson, it's his excavations. And over the summer months, it's been very difficult for him to maintain the site. So we're doing our little bit to keep Stuart Wilson's excavations going. So here we go. So that young girl is Kyla, and that's Menna. And everyone coming on site now has to do a little bit of weeding. And hopefully we can be able to show you a whole building de-weeded next time. It's probably the best time to do it now winter's arriving. So we're coming back on site. We do sift all our soil, but unfortunately we forgot our sieves on this one. So we've got a lot of soil to sift when we're next there, Ellen. So that's why I want you there, Ellen. I need you sifting.
A soil sifter.
She's a soil sifter. So now what we've got actually the wall being very much revealed on the south side, wall being revealed on the northern side. And what is really interesting is that if you see there in the middle of the screen, the wall is extending to the left. So it might be that we've got a building being revealed, which nobody knew about before. So we're looking back to the main, along there, that's the main wall of the site. And then the ditch on the left is some kind of a drainage ditch, but we've got a little bit of a wall extending. And you can see the wall coming out there on the left. And then what we do have is an image on the right-hand side, not here, but we've actually got bits of a collapsed building on the right-hand side, hopefully. So what we're going to do, we're going to stop this. We're going to, where Michelle's digging there, I've got some artifacts to show you. And where whoever else, there's John again. Actually, Goff really hates John. So you've seen him twice.
Don't hate him.
I know you don't. I do. No, I love him to bits. Right. Anyway, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you some artifacts from the south bit of the wall. And that girl that I showed you, Kyla, her first artifact that day was this wonderful piece of pottery. You can see a bit of a rim. That's the inside. And that is actually the outside.
Wow.
And if I just speaker's view, there you go. These wonderful bits of pottery. Okay, so there we go. So that was actually found by Kyla, the first find of the day. And then she finds this rim of a medieval jug. This is a Cambridge type, but it's not made in Cambridgeshire, it's made locally, from just after about the 1300s. The other part that I've actually shown you, this one, is probably from the late 1100s. So this predates this one by a good 100 years. You can tell the difference. And what we've got another bit of roof finial. Here's one I prepared earlier, which is the roof finial, which I've shown you. And we've got another little bit of a fragment of a bit of a roof finial. And then what we've got then, we've got some golden rivets. So as with most golden rivets, they're bent, right? So with these golden rivets, you can see that they're slightly bent. These would have actually gone through an oaken door of some description, right? And obviously they've been bent over on the back. So that's evidence of a rotten or broken down wall on the southern side. But there's one interesting thing on the southern side. There's very little rubble, which would indicate that when the wall had collapsed onto the north side, all the rubble was removed from the south side, and it continued to be used as an allotment. So that's a nice bit of information. And then the last artifacts today are these ones. We've got lots more artifacts, actually, lots of them. But what we've got three of these. We've got three other, these would have been riveted, basically studs on the belt. You can see where that's been bent over.
Yeah.
So basically we've got these studs, which would have been arranged on a belt in a row. And that almost as if you look at the back, is formed in the shape of a snake. But these would have been riveted on. So what we've done, we've brought 4 bags of soil back to wet sieve to see if we can find the other broken bits off of this. We might not be able to find them. And then finally, Cambridge pot, from Cambridge period pot. This is really finely fired. This is Cambridge ware. And this would have been brought to the site from Cambridge. I know that this is Cambridge ware because I had one made up by a potter who was actually reconstructing this type of pottery, really finely fired. So it would have been in a great kiln like Cambridgeshire. So that's basically where that comes from. On that note, obviously, we are still working on site. Anyone who's welcome to come along, but they have obviously got to book some kind of appointment with us, because we we did actually start excavating with face masks, at which point everybody refused to wear them. So, so unfortunately, we've got to be very careful who actually goes on site. So, are there anything else anyone would like to say before we actually call this a day? This has been quite comprehensive. A lecture, articles of the week, porcelain, the dildos, you know, the works.
Getting back to normal.
Getting back to normal, yeah. All back to normal. If anyone wants to chat about anything at the end, any of the trips, then they're very welcome. If there's no more questions, we'll call it a day. Are you all here next week?
Yes.
Yeah, hopefully so.
Good. And obviously, as I say, Goff is going to have a go at me for continually mentioning this thing next Thursday evening. But if you're interested in that, let me know. We want to do a bit of practical archaeology classes as well. So that's what we're doing, looking at that. If there's no more questions, I'd ideally like to thank you today, Chris, Ellen, Keith, Sue, Goff, Karen, the witch, Jim, and Chris. If there's nothing else anyone wants to say, thank you very much. Hopefully you've all enjoyed today, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye, Daddy. Bye, Daddy.
Bye, children.
Bye, Daddy.
Bye, son. Bye. Bye. What a melon. Oh, you're still there, Keith.
Bye, bye.
Oh my God, I'm all alone. Anyway, whoever's been watching this, hopefully you've enjoyed it. And I'm actually going to eat this, which is great. And I should have actually put pause on in the break, but I didn't.